In King's Landing, the long reign of Jaehaerys I Targaryen began in earnest. The young king faced a score of problems when he assumed the rule of the Seven Kingdoms, but two loomed larger than all the rest. The treasury was empty and the crown's debt was mounting, and his secret marriage, which grew less secret with every passing day, sat like a jar of wildfire on a hearth, waiting to explode. Both questions needed to be dealt with, and quickly. The immediate need for gold was resolved by Rego Draz, the new master of coin, who reached out to the Iron Bank of Bravos and its rivals in Tyrosh and Myr to arrange not one but three substantial loans. By playing each bank against the others, the Lord of Air negotiated as favorable terms as might be hoped for. The securing of the loans had one immediate effect. Work on the Dragon Pit was able to resume, and once again a small army of builders and stonemasons swarmed over the hill of Rhaenys. Lord Rego and his king both realized that the loans were a stopgap measure at best. However, they might slow the bleeding but they would not staunch the wound. Only taxes could accomplish that. Lord Celtigar's taxes would not serve. Jaehaerys had no interest in raising port fees or bleeding innkeeps. Nor would he simply demand gold from the lords of the realm, as Maegor had. Too much of that, and the lords would rise up. Nothing is so costly as putting down rebellions, the king declared. The lords would pay, but of their own free will. He would tax the things they wanted, fine and costly things from across the sea. Silk would be taxed, and samite, cloth of gold and cloth of silver, gemstones, Myrish lace and Myrish tapestries, Dornish wines but not wines from the arbor Dornish sand steeds, gilded helms and filigreed armor from the craftsmen of Tyrosh, Lee, and Pentos. Spices would be taxed heaviest of all, peppercorns, cloves, saffron, nutmeg, cinnamon, and all the other rare seasonings from beyond the Jade Gates, already more costly than gold, would become still costlier. We are taxing all the things that made me rich, Lord Rego japed. No man can claim to be oppressed by these taxes, Jaehaerys explained to the small council. To avoid them, a man need only forego his pepper, his silk, his pearls, and he need not pay a groat. The men who want these things desire them desperately, however. How else to flaunt their power and show the world what wealthy men they are? They may squawk, but they will pay. The spice and silk taxes were not the end of it. King Jaehaerys also brought forth a new law on crenellations. Any lord who wished to build a new castle or expand and repair his existing seat would need to pay a hefty price for the privilege. The new tax served a dual purpose, His Grace explained to Grand Maester Benefer. The larger and stronger a castle, the more its lord is tempted to defy me. You would think they might learn from Black Heron, but too many do not know their history. This tax will discourage them from building, whilst those who must build regardless can replenish our treasury whilst they empty theirs. Having done what he could to repair the crown's finances, His Grace turned his attention to the other great matter awaiting him. At long last, he sent for his queen. Alysanne Targaryen and her dragon, Silverwing, departed Dragonstone within an hour of his summons, after having been apart from the king for nigh on half a year. The rest of her household followed by ship. By this time, even blind beggars in the alleys of Flea Bottom knew that Alysanne and Jaehaerys had been wed, but for the sake of propriety the king and queen slept separately for a moon's turn, whilst preparations were made for their second wedding. The king was not disposed to spend coin he did not have on another golden wedding, as splendid and popular as that event had been. 40,000 had witnessed his mother marry Lord Rogar. 1,000 came together in the Red Keep to see Jaehaerys take his sister Alysanne to wife again. This time it was Septon Barth who pronounced them man and wife, beneath the Iron Throne. Lord Rogar Baratheon and the Dowager Queen Alyssa were amongst those standing witness this time. Together with his lordship's brothers Garan and Ronal, they had made their way back from Storm's End to attend the ceremony. But it was another wedding guest who excited the most talk. The queen in the west had come as well. Born on the wings of Dreamfire, Rhaena Targaryen had flown in to see her siblings wed. Dothan to visit her daughter Arya. Bells rang throughout the city as the rites were concluded, and a flight of ravens took wing to every corner of the realm to proclaim this happy union. The king's second wedding differed from his first in one other crucial respect. It was followed by a bedding. Queen Alysanne, in later years, would declare that this was at her insistence. She was ready to lose her maidenhead, and she wanted no more questions as to whether she were, truly, married. Lord Rogar himself, roaring drunk, led the men who disrobed her and carried her to the bridal bed, whilst the queen's companions Janice Templeton, Rosamund Ball, and Prudence and Prunella Celtigar were amongst those who did the honors for the king. There, upon a canopied bed in Maegor's Holdfast in the Red Keep of King's Landing, the marriage of Jaehaerys Targaryen and his sister Alysanne was consummated at long last, sealing their union for all time before the eyes of gods and men. With secrecy finally at an end, the king and his court waited to see how the realm would respond. Jaehaerys had concluded that the violent opposition that had greeted his brother Aegon's marriage had several causes. Their uncle Maegor's taking of a second wife in 39 AC, in defiance of both the High Septon and his own brother, King Aenys, had shattered the delicate understanding between the Iron Throne and the Starry Sept, so the marriage of Aegon and Rhaena had been seen as a further outrage. The denunciation thus provoked had lit a fire across the land, and the swords and stars had taken up the torches, along with a score of pious lords who feared the gods more than their king. Prince Aegon and Princess Rhaena had been little known amongst the small folk, and they had begun their progress without dragons, in large part because Aegon was not yet a dragon rider, which left them vulnerable to the mobs that sprung up to attack them in the Riverlands. None of these conditions applied to Jaehaerys and Alysanne. There would be no denunciation from the Starry Sept, whilst some amongst the most devout still bristled at the Targaryen tradition of sibling marriage. The present High Septon, Septon Moons, High Lickspittle, was complacent and cautious, not inclined to wake sleeping dragons. The swords and stars had been broken and outlawed, only at the Wall, where 2,000 former poor fellows now wore the black cloaks of the Night's Watch, did they have sufficient numbers to be troublesome, were they so inclined. And King Jaehaerys was not about to repeat his brother's mistake. He and his queen meant to see the land they ruled, to learn its needs firsthand, to meet his lords and take their measure, to let themselves be seen by the small folk, and to hear their griefs in turn. But wherever they went, it would be with their dragons. For all these reasons, Jaehaerys believed that the realm would accept his marriage. But he was not a man to trust in chance. Words are wind, he told his council, but wind can fan a fire. My father and my uncle fought words with steel and flame. We shall fight words with words, and put out the fires before they start. And so saying, his grace sent forth not knights and men at arms, but preachers. Tell every man you meet of Alysanne's kindness, her sweet and gentle nature, and her love for all the people of our kingdom, great and small. The king charged them. 7 went forth at his command, 3 men and 4 women. In place of swords and axes, they were armed only with their wits, their courage, and their tongues. Many a tale would be told of their travels, and their exploits would become legends, growing vastly larger in the process, as is the way of legends. Only one of the 7 speakers was known to the common folks of the realm when they set out. No less a person than Queen Eleanor herself, the Black Bride who had found Maegor dead upon the Iron Throne. Clad in her queenly raiment, which grew shabbier and more threadbare by the day, Eleanor of House Costain would travel the reach giving eloquent testimony to the evil of her late king and the goodness of his successors. In later years, giving up all claims to nobility, she would join the faith, rising eventually to become Mother Eleanor at the Great Mother House in Lannisport. The names of the other 6 who went forth to speak for Jaehaerys would in time become nigh as famous as the queens. 3 were young Septons, cunning Septon Baldric, learned Septon Rollo, and fierce old Septon Alfin, who had lost his legs years before and was carried everywhere in a litter. The women the young king chose were no less extraordinary. Septa Isabel had been won over by Queen Alysanne whilst serving her on Dragonstone. Diminutive Septa Violante was renowned for her skills as a healer. Everywhere she went, it was said, she performed miracles. From the Vale came Mother Maris, who had taught generations of orphan girls at a mother house on an island in Gulltown's harbor. In their travels throughout the realm, the 7 speakers talked of Queen Alysanne, her piety, her generosity, and her love for the king, her brother. But for those Septons, begging brothers, and pious knights and lords who challenged them by citing passages from the 7-pointed star or the sermons of High Septons past, they had a ready answer, one that Jaehaerys himself had crafted in King's Landing, ably assisted by Septon Oswick and, especially, Septon Barth. In later years, the Citadel and the Starry Sept alike would call it the doctrine of exceptionalism. Its basic tenet was simple. The faith of the 7 had been born in the hills of Andalos of old, and had crossed the narrow sea with the Andals. The laws of the 7, as laid down in sacred text and taught by the Septas and Septons in obedience to the Father of the faithful, decreed that brother might not lie with sister, nor father with daughter, nor mother with son, that the fruits of such unions were abominations, loathsome in the eyes of the gods. All this the exceptionalists affirmed, but with this caveat, the Targaryens were different. Their roots were not in Andalos, but in Valyria of old, where different laws and traditions held sway. A man had only to look at them to know that they were not like other men. Their eyes, their hair, their very bearing, all proclaimed their differences. And they flew dragons. They alone of all the men in the world had been given the power to tame those fearsome beasts, once the doom had come to Valyria. One God made us all, Andals and Valyrians and first men, Septinalfin would proclaim from his litter, but he did not make us all alike. He made the lion and the aurochs as well, both noble beasts, butchertain gifts he gave to one and not the other, and the lion cannot live as an aurochs, nor an aurochs as a lion. For you to bed your sister would be a grievous sin, sir. But you are not the blood of the dragon, no more than I am. What they do is what they have always done, and it is not for us to judge them. Legend tells us that in one small village, the quick-witted Septon Baldric was confronted by a burly hedge knight, once a poor fellow, who said, and if I want to fuck my sister too, do I have your leave? The Septon smiled and replied, go to Dragonstone and claim a dragon. If you can do that, sir, I will marry you and your sister myself. Here is a quandary every student of history must face. When looking back upon the things that happened in years past, we can say, this and this and this were the causes of what occurred. When looking back on things that did not happen, however, we have only surmise. We know the realm did not rise up against King Jaehaerys and Queen Alysanne in 51 AC as it had against Aegon and Rhaena 10 years earlier. The why of it is a good deal less certain. The High Septon's silence spoke loudly, no doubt, and the lords and common folk alike were weary of war. But if words have power, wind or no, surely the 7 speakers played a part as well. Though the king was happy in his queen, and the realm happy with their marriage, Jaehaerys had not been wrong when he foresaw that he would face a time of testing. Having remade the council, reconciled Lord Rhaegar and Queen Alyssa, and imposed new taxes to restore the crown's coffers, he was faced with what would prove to be his thorniest problem yet: his sister Rhaena. Since taking her leave of Lyman Lannister and Castle Rock, Rhaena Targaryen and her traveling court had made their own royal progress of sorts, visiting the Marbrands of Ashemark, the Rhines of Castamere, the Leffords at the Golden Tooth, the Vances at Wayfarer's Rest, and finally the Pipers of Pinkmaiden. No matter where she turned, the same problems arose. They are all warm at first, she told her brother, when she met with him after his wedding, but it does not last. Either I am unwelcome or too welcome. They murmur of the cost of keeping me and mine, but it is Dreamfire who excites them. Some fear her, more want her, and it is those who trouble me most. They lust for dragons of their own. That I will not give them, but where am I to go? Here, the king suggested. Return to court, and live forever in your shadow. I need a seat of my own. A place where no lord may threaten me, banish me, or trouble those I have taken under my protection. I need lands, men, a castle. We can find you lands, the king said, build you a castle. All the lands are taken, all the castles occupied, Rhaena replied, but there is one I have a claim to, a better claim than your own, brother. I am the blood of the dragon. I want my father's seat, the place where I was born. I want Dragonstone. To that King Jaehaerys had no answer, promising only to take the matter under consideration. His council, when the question was put to them, were united in their opposition to ceding the ancestral seat of House Targaryen to the widowed queen, but none had any better solution to offer. After reflecting on the matter, his grace met with his sister again. I will grant you Dragonstone as your seat, he told her, for there is no place more fitting for the blood of the dragon. But you shall hold the island and the castle by my gift, not by right. Our grandsire made 7 kingdoms into one with fire and blood. I cannot and will not make them 2 by carving you off a separate kingdom of your own. You are a queen by courtesy, but I am king, and my writ runs from Aldtown to the Wall. And on Dragonstone as well. Are we of one mind on this, sister? Are you so uncertain of that iron seat that you must needs have your own blood bend the knee to you, brother? Rhaena threw back at him. So be it. Give me Dragonstone and one thing more, and I shall trouble you no further. One thing more? Jaehaerys asked. Arya. I want my daughter restored to me. Done, the king said, mayhaps too hastily, for it must be remembered that Arya Targaryen, a girl of 8, was his own acknowledged successor, heir apparent to the Iron Throne. The consequences of this decision would not be known for years to come, however. For the nonce it was done, and the queen in the west at a stroke became the queen in the east. The year continued without further crisis or test as Jaehaerys and Alysanne settled into rule. If certain members of the small council were taken aback when the queen began to attend their meetings, they voiced their objections only to one another. And soon not even that, for the young queen proved to be wise, well-read, and clever, a welcome voice in any discussion. Alysanne Targaryen had happy memories of her childhood before her uncle Maegor seized the crown. During the reign of her father, Aenys, her mother, Queen Alyssa, had made the court a splendid place, filled with song, spectacle, and beauty. Musicians, mummers, and bards competed for her favor and that of the king. Wines from the arbor flowed like water at their feasts, the halls and yards of Dragonstone rang with laughter, and the women of the court dazzled in pearls and diamonds. Maegor's court had been a grim, dark place, and the regency had offered little change, for the memories of King Aenys's time were painful to his widow, whilst Lord Rhaegar was of a martial temperament and once declared mummers to be of less use than monkeys, for, they both prance about, tumble, caper, and squeal, but if a man is hungry enough, he can eat a monkey. Queen Alysanne looked back on the short-lived glories of her father's court fondly, however, and made it her purpose to make the Red Keep glitter as it never had before, buying tapestries and carpets from free cities and commissioning murals, statuary, and tilework to decorate the castle's halls and chambers. At her command, men from the city watch combed Flea Bottom until they found Tom the Strummer, whose mocking songs had amused king and commons alike during the War for the White Cloaks. Alysanne made him the court singer, the first of many who would hold that office in the decades to come. She brought in a harpist from Aldtown, a company of mummers from Bravos, dancers from Lee, and gave the Red Keep its first fool, a fat man called the Goodwife who dressed as a woman and was never seen without his wooden children, a pair of cleverly carved puppets who said ribald, shocking things. All this pleased King Jaehaerys, but none of it pleased him half so much as the gift that Queen Alysanne gave him several moons later, when she told him she was with child. Sir Oren Baratheon never did return to Westeros. Together with the men who had accompanied him to Aldtown, he crossed to the free city of Tyrosh, where he took service with the Archon. A year later, he married the Archon's daughter, the very maid his brother Rhaegar had hoped to wed to King Jaehaerys as a means of securing an alliance between the Iron Throne and the free city. A buxom maid with blue-green hair and a winsome manner, Sir Oren's wife soon gave him a daughter, though there was some doubt whether the girl was truly his, for like many women of the free cities she was free with her favor. When her father's term as Archon ended, Sir Oren lost his position as well and was forced to leave Tyrosh for Myr, where he joined the Maiden's Men, a free company with an especially unsavory reputation. He was killed soon afterward in the disputed lands, during a battle with the Men of Valor. We have no knowledge of the fate of his wife and daughter.